Hello and welcome back to Live from Paris. It's time now for our daily look at the world of the arts, and it's Thursday, which means we're focusing on all things literary. And today marks the first day of the Comic Book Festival in Angoulême, the capital of comic books and graphic novels here in France. It's now one of the biggest comic festivals in Europe, and this year they'll be celebrating their 40th festival. And inspired by that, Sylvia Whitman from Shakespeare and Company Bookshop here in Paris is here to give us some graphic novel recommendations. So what have you got for us, Sylvia?
Well, let's start with the most unusual one, Building Stories by Chris Ware. Here it is. It doesn't look like a book. It's a box. It looks actually like a jigsaw puzzle. It looks
like some kind of board game or something.
Exactly, and it is a bit of a puzzle actually, because you open it and you find a variety of 14 different pieces of broadsheets, booklets, a game board. This is the game board, strips like that.
I feel like we should get it out and play it right now.
Well, that's what I did. Well, actually, at first I have to say I hesitated in reading this because the sheer weight of it, first of all. And then also there's no direction given in terms of what order to read the stories in. But once you get down to it, it is such a unique experience. You end up wanting to put pieces all over the room, like reading the Sunday papers. Inevitably, this gets other people interested, and often it's really fun actually to read it with someone else. And it was like opening an unexpected gift.
Wow. Sounds not something you take on the train, but really, really interesting. The total opposite of the sort of electronic reading experience, when everything's smaller.
I think that's one of the statements that the author was making in making such a unique object. You're really, in reading some of the comics, you're transported to some comics you might have read as a child. In reading the broadsheets, it's like reading a newspaper casually over breakfast. It's a totally different experience of reading, and you do exactly as the title suggests, you build stories.
So tell us about the actual stories in it.
Well, you can read each piece separately, but there's a wonderful kind of satisfaction and surprise when you see how they interweave together. There is one, for example, in one story you might read a character reading about a bee called Branford, and then the next comic you pick up is the comic Branford, the best bee in the world. Otherwise, all the characters are sort of interlinked through one residential building in Chicago. And there is a focus on one particular woman. She, as a reader, you get very attached to her, and you're almost disappointed when she doesn't appear in one of the comics.
Okay, so it's called Building. What about the building itself that features?
Well, the building is a character itself. It's actually one of my favourite characters. There's one page where the building is speaking to the reader, telling the reader all the things that it's witnessed over the years of being a building. For example, it lists 217 punches, 4 criminals, 3 births, 725 roasted turkeys, 29 broken hearts, and so on. So there's something very kind of Hitchcock Rear Window about this story, or Georges Perec, a user's manual. It's snapshots of people's daily lives and the joy in their lives, but also the incredible loneliness in it as well. It's a very intimate book, actually, and it's an absolute adventure to read.
Yeah, it does look so unusual and exciting, and would make a wonderful present as well. I definitely look like I definitely want one myself. But moving on now to something completely different, really. It's called Journalism by Joe Sacco, also a graphic book. One of the world's great cartoonists, and he's sort of been hailed as the creator of war reportage comics. And his previous book, Palestine, won an American Book Award, and this is his latest.
Yeah, this is a collection of reporting that he's done over the last 10 years. And actually, graphic novels can be a really good form for serious reporting, even though that's not really obvious to us at first. But that might be because you haven't read Joe Sacco, because he is one of the best and one of the creators of this. He says in terms of his subjects that he chooses stories that seldom get a hearing. And in this, for example, in this collection, he takes us to war crime trials at The Hague. He takes us to Gaza, to war in Iraq, women in refugee camps in Chechnya, as well as the so-called untouchable community of Musahas in India. And in that last story, he goes to some of the poorest communities in India. And as with a lot of his stories, he's very much present in the drawings. And he doesn't really believe in the idea of total objective journalism. To reiterate that, he puts himself visually in a lot of the drawings. And here you see him trying to spend some time in various villages in India, and often being pushed on by higher authorities in India who don't like him asking questions. But he does manage to show the extreme poverty in a country where more than 3/4 of the population live on less than $0.50 a day. And in the particular community that he was in, people were raiding rat holes to get food.
Wow, okay. But more generally, he's known for looking at the Middle East. But does he ever cover Europe?
The story on the illegal immigrants is based in Malta, which is actually where the author was born. And that is actually one of the strongest stories for me in the collection, because it chronicles both the desperate situation of the refugees fleeing from conflict in their native countries, and alongside that the well-intentioned but very frustrated efforts of the Maltese trying to welcome these increasing numbers on a tiny, tiny island.
Now, he does have a very distinctive style. We can see it a bit there, I think. But are the drawings always in black and white?
They're nearly always in black and white, and that makes for a very cinematic impression, and it really conveys emotions brilliantly.
Okay, well, moving on to your last choice, Daughter of Her Father's Eyes. It's quite an intriguing title.
Yes.
And that recently won the Kostet Biography Award as well.
Yeah, and coincidentally enough, it's recommended by Joe Sacco on the back.
It's an interlinked world, clearly.
There we go. It's actually the first graphic work to win that prize, and I can see why. It's a wonderful book, and it's a collaboration between husband and wife, Mary and Brian Talbot.
Okay, so who is the daughter, or what is the daughter, and who is the father?
Well, there are two. It interweaves two very different coming-of-age stories, that of Mary, the author, and she was the daughter of eminent Joycean scholar James Atherton, and also the story of Lucia Joyce, the daughter of James Joyce and Nora Barnacle.
Okay, and what happened to Lucia Joyce then?
Well, Lucia Joyce took a very different path to Mary's, obviously, although there are a lot of similarities between the two fathers, and that the story kind of brings those similarities together. They were both daughters had very complicated relationships with these kind of charismatic but cruel fathers. And Lucia, for example, when she was living in Paris, she became obsessed with dancing. It was all she wanted to do, but her parents disapproved of this desire, and her father in particular thought it was unseemly for a girl to cavort around stage in such a way, and he thought that women, the only thing a young lady needed to know was how to hold an umbrella.
That's useful. But
absolutely, but not the only thing. And so Lucia, sadly, she ended up spending the last 30 years of her life in a mental institution. So it brings up a lot of issues like social expectations and gender politics.
Okay, well, the author's story is a bit happier.
Yeah, much happier. And the book is actually very moving because the collaboration between Mary and Brian, it's really, in this book, it comes across as a sort of a celebration of their enduring love.
And graphics must really enhance the telling of that.
They are exquisite. The graphics are absolutely beautiful. They're stunning and very evocative of all the eras. So Brian uses black and white for 20s and 30s Paris, gritty sepia for post-war Northern England, and full colour for modern day. And you're transported from era to era, but in a very fluent way.
Wow, that is fascinating stuff. I have to say, graphic novels not something that I'd necessarily thought of before, but
you must.
Three very interesting and very different choices there. Sylvia, thank you very much indeed for bringing those to France 24. And the Angoulême Comic Book Festival is on this week, so do go along. That's just about it for today. Thank you for watching live from Paris, and do stay tuned. The international weather's coming up next. Then Jeannie Godula will be here with all the latest headlines.